Hi, this is Frankie V from the Christ is All podcast at frankviola.org, and you're listening to my friend Shane B from the Seminary Dropout.
You are listening to Seminary Dropout, episode 61, and I'm your host, Shane Blackshear. This week on the show, we'll talk with author and blogger Carl Medearis.
My liberal progressive friends think I'm way too conservative and evangelical and negative way, as they would see it. And my conservative friends think I'm way too liberal. So I think I'm perfectly imbalanced.
All this and more on this week's episode of Seminary Dropout. Let's go. You know, just as I'm hearing that intro that I've just mixed together, it sounds like Carl is saying seriously that he's the perfect balance. He was definitely saying that in jest. The stuff about his theology, that was real. You'll hear it in context in the interview, but just want to make sure that you get that. Okay, now about Carl. Carl Medearis is an international expert in the field of Arab American and Muslim Christian relations. He acts as a catalyst for a number of current movements in the Middle East to promote peacemaking, as well as cultural, political, and religious dialogue leading toward reconciliation. He is the author of the acclaimed book on these issues, Muslims, Christians, and Jesus. Carl, his wife Chris, and 3 kids lived in Beirut, Lebanon for 12 years. Through their unique and strategic approach around the Arab world, they encouraged university students, business professionals, and political leaders to live their lives by the principles and teachings of Jesus in order to change their societies and nations. Today, Carl spends much of his time working with leaders both in the West and in the Arab world with the hope of seeing the Arab Middle East and the West experience full and fruitful relationships through the life and teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. Carl Medearis, thank you so much for joining me today.
Welcome.
You grew up in the Midwest and in kind of a pretty conservative household, theologically and politically and all that. That's a little bit different than where you are today. I wouldn't characterize you as, really progressive or liberal or anything like that, but you don't really fit in that conservative mold. Was it the time that you spent in the Middle East that really changed that trajectory, or was it before then?
Yeah, terms are always dangerous, aren't they? Conservative.
There's a lot of baggage there.
Yeah, you stumbled even as you said it. You're like, we wouldn't really call you progressive or liberal. I mean, is that bad to be called progressive or liberal? Depends who you are, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I live in the perfect middle where I offend everybody. So my liberal progressive friends think I'm way too conservative and evangelical and negative way, as they would see it, and my conservative friends think I'm way too liberal. So I think I'm perfectly imbalanced or something like that.
The privilege of being a Christian centrist. It's not that you get along with everybody, it's that you have no tribe.
That's right. I have no tribe. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I grew up in a small town in Nebraska, rural Nebraska, where the religion is Cornhusker football, and then Christianity is a distant second. And my dad was a pastor. And so, yeah, I did grow up in a very conservative home, politically, socially, and theologically, for sure. And I would say in a lot of ways, I still would be all of those things, and the good parts of those, And then, and then I started a life living in and out of the Middle East. Lived in Beirut for 12 years with my family, but also lived a time when I was younger in Yemen. Literally lived in a tent with nomadic Bedouin Arabs when I was 20 and 21. And, there's just something about living internationally for anybody that's listening to this that has traveled much internationally. You just, you realize the world is bigger and broader and more confusing than however you thought it was before. Mm-hmm. Whether you're liberal or conservative, I mean, it messes you up either way. It's not like traveling makes you liberal. Maybe it does in the real sense of the word liberal. If liberal means open-minded and open-hearted, which is a nice way to define liberal, then it does make you more liberal.
Sure.
If it makes you think that abortion is a good idea, then that's not what we're talking about. So, but yeah, I mean, you live in the Middle East for a while, and you see things through your new host eyes. And so I started to think of and experience American foreign policy, for instance, through the eyes of my Arab friends who felt hurt by America, which was a surprise for me. I just thought, why would we wouldn't hurt somebody. We're nice. We're Americans, we're nice people.
We're the good guys.
We're the good guys. And I generally still think that. I think that we are well-intentioned. We're a well-intentioned country, and sometimes we miss that and we don't know how it feels on the ground for the people that we're trying to help. So I lived in Iraq. I lived in Lebanon and Syria. My son was born in Damascus. We've been to Israel and Palestine, been to both sides of that conflict many times. And so when you live it and you experience it and feel it, it does tend to shape your politics and your ideas of what's right and wrong. And in some ways, it just confuses you. I think being conservative can sometimes mean, I'm not confused because I know the truth and I'm not changing, right? That can be, That's a bit of a stereotype and a negative stereotype of the word conservative, but it could be that. And if that's conservative, then I'm not, because I can't always say what's right and wrong is so obvious. And I can't claim with the same amount of assurance I know the truth when it comes to politics and, societies and whatever. And my theology has been shaped by that even as well. You live in the land, the Holy Land of Israel, and you see how the Holy Land and the people, the chosen people, are actually living and treating their neighbors. And it confuses you a little bit about your theology of Israel and your eschatology. And you read the Left Behind series, but it doesn't make sense anymore, So
yeah.
Yeah, anyway, that's a big opening statement, a big opening thought right there. So yeah, thanks for leading me down that mind.
And I'm glad you did go there, because that was something I really wanted to ask you about. Israel has always been a hot button issue for a long time now. Obviously, with the newest conflict going on right now, it feels like the fire has been stoked a little bit. I'm curious about a few things. You've written extensively about this, and I guess my first question that I want to know is it the fact that you live there? Is that what has made you so passionate about that subject and knowledgeable?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the obvious angle would be we lived in Beirut for 12 years, but I've been working in and out of the Middle East for 32. So since I was 21. So now if you are good at math, you
busted.
My age. Yeah, an old 53. So yeah, I mean, living there, it makes if you, for instance, if you live in the southern part of the state of Texas or in Arizona, Southern California, surprise, surprise, you're very engaged in the immigration issue. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I live in Denver, Colorado most of the time. So we're back and forth to the Middle East, but in Denver, we're not as engaged. So I kind of tend to dehumanize the immigration issue because I'm not sure I know any immigrants, Yeah. But so you live in the Middle East. So we lived in Lebanon, and the only thing I can speak from our kids' perspective, our 3 kids who grew up there, our son was born there. The only thing they knew about Israel was that Israelis flew F-16 airplanes and bombed us, like literally bombed Lebanon. Now, they're not on the other side, so they're not on the receiving side of Hezbollah rockets, so they don't know that part, because that would obviously shape, if you're in northern Israel, all you think about Lebanon as a place where Hezbollah operates to bomb you from. But we didn't live there. We lived in Lebanon. So all our kids knew. Now, we knew more about Israel than that, but literally all our kids knew was Israelis fly airplanes and they bomb us and our friends. We had the windows in our house shattered twice by Israeli bombs hitting so close to our house that it blew the windows out. That's pretty scary. So that starts to shape your politics, which then starts to make you rethink your theology. I grew up always hearing that experience doesn't shape your theology. I hope we all know that's just not true. I mean, there's no such silliness. Of course, it shapes our theology. Yeah. It should shape our theology. If I haven't experienced Christ, then how do I have any theology of Jesus if I haven't experienced him? So of course it does. And so, yes, on the Israeli-Palestinian issue, it was our experience living in Lebanon that got us most passionate. But I've been kind of attracted to that part of the world since before we moved there. And I just, in the Middle East, you cannot separate religion from politics. You can't separate theology from life. They don't have the same dichotomies of those issues that we have here in the West. They are all integrated. They're meshed together in either a beautiful way or a dangerous way. So Islamic fundamentalism, you see it playing out right now with ISIS. That's the dangerous way of mixing politics with religion. But it can also be a beautiful thing. I think the American way of separating our spiritual life from our practical life is dangerous, right? I mean, we go to church on Sundays, but live like the devil on Monday. That's not very helpful. So, but yes, I mean, our personal experience going to the Holy Land, visiting, having friends in Israel, having friends in the West Bank, Gaza, who are Palestinian, Christian and Muslim, Jewish, all the three religions, of course, kind of originate from there. That shapes how you think about it, and it makes me very passionate to help Westerners, especially Western Christians, understand the people of the Middle East. And I think we might understand the Israeli Jewish perspective a little bit because we might know some Jewish people. We don't understand the Muslim Arab perspective very much because we're less likely to know any Muslim Arabs, because there are less of them here in the States, in the West. So, most of what I do is helping American Christians understand Muslims and Islam and Arabs. And there's really three different things. Muslims and Islam and Arabs are all, they're their own individual categories. So, yes, it makes a difference.
Well, I want to ask you some specific questions about the theology behind the Jewish people being God's chosen people and that kind of thing. But I can't help but jump to the question that I really want to hear what you have to say about, which is, Christians, we've got tons of stuff to disagree about with each other, and we can take any other subject and we can disagree, and we can even work ourselves up into a fever pitch, but it seems once we get on this subject and disagree that it automatically gets turned up to 11 right off.
True.
That there's some, I mean, it sounds funny for me to say this, but there's a religious devotion to believing a certain thing about Israel.
Yeah, you're right.
Where did that come from?
Yeah, so thanks for the easy question. Thanks for trying to get me in trouble. So you just acknowledge that this is the most difficult of all things. And so, yes, Carl, let's focus on that for a while.
Hey man, if you want to come here and be an expert about something else, that's fine. But you blog about Israel.
Let's start with Israel, go to ISIS, and let's finish up with Al Qaeda.
Sure.
Hamas and Hezbollah in between. I actually I don't know. I have some thoughts about that, but I'm not sure what the answer is to the actual question you asked, which was, why is that? Why is it such a heated topic?
Yeah.
I'm actually not sure why it is. But the fact that it is really clear. I mean, I grew up in a church and in church systems in the 60s and 70s. I can remember going to churches. Our church didn't have this, but going to churches that had a Christian flag, which I always thought was kind of funny. I didn't know Christians had a flag, but kind of white with maybe a blue stripe or something, or a blue cross, and the American flag and the Israeli flag on the stage. Wow. I can remember churches that have, now I think all three of those are bizarre. And I would say equally bizarre. I don't want a Christian flag in my church. We're not part of a Christian tribe. I mean, that's tribal. There's no nation called the nation of Christianity that has its own flag. We're members of God's kingdom, and our flag is Jesus. It's no physical national flag for Christianity. I think that's harmful. I think that's the kind of stuff that leads to the Crusades. It leads to the Inquisition. It leads to the bizarre thinking that America is a Christian nation and we should do Christian nation things. And, just kind of putting that all together it just leads to bizarro land, So I'm not for a Christian flag. I'm not for an American flag being in the church. I think that mixes church and state in an unhealthy way. I do not pledge allegiance to the flag of America. I do not do that. I pledge allegiance to Jesus Christ. And do I love America? Absolutely. I mean, I actually think I've traveled all over the world. I think America is my favorite country. I don't know if it's the best country, but I love it. I mean, my kids live here. We live here. I mean, I want it to be safe and secure. I love America. I am American. I'm proud to be American. There's good and bad with that, but I'm proud. I don't hide my blue American passport, so I love that. And I don't pledge allegiance. My allegiance is only to Jesus. It's actually it's actually not as controversial as it sounds, really, if you think it through. It's really not. It sounds kind of crazy if you just say it, which I don't usually say. But and then the Israeli flag, I'm just kind of thinking, what the heck? What is that doing in the church? Well, somehow to some people that makes sense.
Yeah.
Two nations under one God, or one day, or I don't know. We're all the same. Or it's something about the Old Testament. It's the story of the Old Testament. Of course, the Hebrew Bible is, to a large degree, is a story of Israel and the formation. I mean, let's not forget the formation of a political nation of Israel. Saul being its first king wasn't God's intention. God was not. He wasn't for Saul. He didn't want Saul to be the king of Israel. And he's like, okay, well, if you people want that, here you go. Good luck with that. And he gives them free choice, which is, God's beautiful at doing. He's very gracious to us by allowing us to make our own mistakes. But that wasn't God's intention. They were to be a people under his banner, under his lordship, like we are now. So I just think there's some historical reasons for our affinity with Israel. There's all this kind of Christian mythology, I call it, around Israel. And, I joked about the Left Behind series, but, Left Behind series, our eschatology, our desire to get out of here, our desire for the rapture to hurry up and come, and Armageddon's, the big thing that's going to happen before, where Gog and Magog attack Israel. And we don't know who that is, but it used to be the Soviets, and now it can't be them because there's no Soviets. And then it was China, and then it's the Arabs. And, so there's this whole thing about, the end times in there, about Israel being God's Old Testament people, about the miracle of the modern nation of Israel existing, about all the Arabs around them trying to attack them and kill them. And we love a good underdog. I think Americans love the underdog, So we're rooting for Israel. Also, a lot of Israelis, frankly, are white Westerners. They're Americans that have gone back to Israel, so we have affinity towards them. They speak our language. They speak English. They look like us. They wear suits and ties. Arabs are brown-skinned and kind of crazy. They yell and shout and wave their arms around. Remember Yasser Arafat, when Yasser Arafat would do a TV interview, he always had like a 5-day growth of beard. And he had a pistol shoved in his, pant pocket, and he had that headdress on.
Yeah.
And his English wasn't good. And he would always kind of yell and wave his arms around. And we'd he just looked kind of scary, like a terrorist. And then the Israeli spokesman would come on and speak perfect American English. And he would say, we want to understand our neighbors, but we can't understand them. We don't know, we want to partner for peace, but where are they? And all American audiences just kind of go, yes,
exactly.
We feel you, we get you. And then Arafat would come on and say, he could say exactly the same words, but it would sound like, we want to have a partner for peace, but we have no partner for peace. He'd say the same words, but he looks crazy. And we'd be like, the one guy's our guy, the other guy is a terrorist. Obviously, look at them.
Yeah.
So I think there are lots of reasons. Like there are theological, historical, social, psychological reasons why we have an affinity for the modern nation of Israel. But the theology of the New Testament, I think, is clear. Jesus clearly, he doesn't mention the land. Whenever they try to say the land is the deal, when will you restore the kingdom to us, the physical kingdom, he again and again spiritualizes the kingdom, that it's in your heart. It is not land. God's kingdom is the whole earth, and it's people that are submitted to the king. Paul in Galatians 3 and 4 just says that the physical seed of Abraham was seed singular, not plural, and it refers to Jesus Christ. And all who believe in him are part of this kingdom. And those who are of the physical seed of Abraham are not necessarily actually part of the real seed of Abraham. I mean, Paul actually makes it very clear in Galatians 3 and 4 that we, the tribe of Jesus, are God's chosen people. We are the chosen, and Israel has a part in that. Jews who believe in him as the Messiah are in that, they're the original branch, actually, and we are grafted into their branch. But now the deal is, Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the way. The best Israeli Jew doesn't have life unless he has life through Christ. And so I think the New Testament's clear about that, but we sometimes cling on to the Old Testament as if it wasn't fulfilled by Christ, even though he says he came to fulfill it. We forget that part. So
we forget that part very conveniently as well, because I noticed that people who go to those isolated verses in the Old Testament are very well aware that we can trim our beards and wear clothing of mixed materials and those things.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's, on one hand, there's kind of at least some kind of vague acknowledgement that in some way these things don't apply to us anymore, except for the things that I want to apply to us.
Of course.
The other odd thing about it to me is that I find that most of these people are very hardcore evangelical stereotype kind of people that would hang on to those things. And to me, the ironic thing about that is the one signifier of that is that the most important thing of all is accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and that is the thing.
Yeah, that's right.
But yet, if you have a great Orthodox Jewish person or a secular Jewish person who are good people, but they would say, no, Jesus is not God. Jesus is not Messiah, my Lord and Savior. Somehow they're still God's chosen people.
I know. It's amazing.
It doesn't play by its own rules, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Doesn't play by its own rules. That's well said. And that theology then affects our politics if we're honest with ourselves. I mean, because if you actually believe all that land was promised to Israel, the modern secular nation state of Israel, which I think is an unbelievable jump.
The boundaries that were drawn up about 100 years ago, is that what you're referring to?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if you think that, which I can't figure out how you would, but lots of Christians do, then really the Palestinians are just an annoyance. They're in the wrong spot and they ought to leave. They need to leave somehow. So then when you see Israel doing things that clearly are hoping the Palestinians want to leave, then you kind of go, well, yeah, I mean, it's too bad. It's not nice, but, they are in the wrong spot. And really, that's Israel. I mean, Israel should have all that land. So I know they're building a new settlement. I know they just took 1,000 acres of land, actually, the day before yesterday. But, it is their land. I mean, God promised it to them. So your theology then does actually affect your politics, which I think it does. I mean, I think our theology always affects our politics. And it should, by the way, it should affect our politics. But if you have bad theology, like you think that the modern secular nation state called Israel has anything to do with the Israelites of the Old Testament, if you think that which is horrible theology, then, I mean, I call it Christian Zionism. It's just this funny mix of, I don't know what. Then you're gonna be pro-Israeli military in a really weird, unhelpful way at the expense, literally, of thousands of Palestinian lives. Mm-hmm. The current war, there are about 70 Israelis killed, 68 were soldiers. So only two Israeli civilians died. 2,500 Palestinians died, and over 2,000 were civilians. So just think about that. About 80% of the Palestinians killed were civilians. Less than 1% of the Israelis that were killed were civilians. It was about, whatever 70 to 2,500 is. I don't know what the percentage is. That's a huge difference. But yet somehow still the Palestinians in the Western media still come out as the bad guy.
Yeah.
Right. As the one who are attacking Israel, trying to drive it. I actually met with the leader of the Hamas in the West Bank once, a couple of years ago. And I just asked him, I said, so what is it about you guys wanting to drive Israel into the sea? Like, why do you want, I was doing it for my Tea with Hezbollah book. And he just laughed. He goes, well, to be honest, maybe we'd like to drive them into the sea. But he goes, we don't have any power to do that. And he said, let me ask you, who's actually driving who into the sea? Let's talk about actual numbers. And it's about 200 to 1. For every one Israeli that dies in the conflict, about 200 Palestinians die. So, but again, that's politics. I like to focus more on your theology. Get your theology of Jesus right. Get your theology of land right. Get your theology of God's kingdom right. And the rest of it kind of falls into place.
You bring up a good point, because part of what my thought process has been these last few weeks or months that this latest, spat of violence has gone on is that even if these people who would disagree with you and me that we've been talking about, even if they are right about Israel, the modern state of Israel being God's chosen people, even if they're right,
Yeah.
God by no means lets Israel in the Old Testament do whatever they want. In fact,
Right.
half of it is God disciplining, punishing them for getting out of line. And when you think about that and look on the news at what is happening, where it seems that Israel is using a hatchet instead of a scalpel to
Right.
deal with the situation, is very, very hard to justify what's going on.
That's right. It's impossible. Yeah.
I want to shift gears a little bit, because your area of expertise is not just Israeli-Palestinian relations, but it's also the Middle East in general and Muslims. And you, probably your most popular book that you're most well known for is Muslims, Christians, and Jesus. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about that. I'm curious what some maybe surprising things were when you first went over to the Middle East and first began meeting and befriending Muslims. What were some surprising things for you to learn?
Yeah, I mean, everything. I think we were surprised by everything. We were surprised by how friendly people were, but we were surprised by how hospitable they were. We were surprised by how easy it was to talk to them about faith, about Jesus specifically. I think that may have been the biggest surprise, is that it's so easy to talk to Muslims about Jesus, specifically Jesus, not just God, not just faith, not religion. That's easy as well. I mean, you hear in America, we have this saying that, you don't bring up politics and religion in polite company, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's definitely not the case in the Middle East. The first thing they want to talk to you about is your politics and your religion, which is a lot of fun. I love that. It's just, it just gets, and then they'll also ask you how much you paid for that car. You're like, hey, nice car there. How much did that cost? And then you tell them, and they go, oh, my goodness, I've got a cousin that could have given you half that price.
It's networking. I like it.
It's awesome, So they want to talk about politics and religion and how much you paid and how much you make. And I mean, all the taboo subjects here, they're free to talk about. But I just think the general openness and friendliness of the Muslim world was what surprised us most. I mean, we kind of had a sense that would be that way because we knew some Muslims, of course, here in the States. But when we moved to Beirut and lived there, full time with Muslims for 12 years, all of our neighbors were Muslim. I mean, they're just the best, funnest, wonderfulest people in the whole world. And I think Americans, of course, all we see is news. So if your only exposure to Muslims is American news, well, no wonder you think they're crazy. I mean, if it bleeds, it leads. So only the bloody stories lead the news. So if you're watching half-hour news or even watching CNN or Fox News or whatever, you're not going to see Muhammad the butcher who has little table scraps that he gives to the poor kids at the end of every day, or Abu Ahmed, the baker who bakes extra bread in downtown Beirut to give to the children at the end of the day. You don't see those stories. You see ISIS. You see Al Qaeda. I mean, of course, you see the bad stuff, the bloody stuff. So that forms our opinion about Muslims. I understand it. It's unfortunate. It's kind of just the way it is. I'm not sure that will ever change because we're not going to ever cover the butcher and the baker and the candlestick maker who are wonderful Muslim guys. We just don't do that.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, we had lots of surprises and I would say all positive.
I'm curious what you would say is, because one of the things that you do in the book is you didn't write that book, Muslims, Christians, and Jesus, for Christians who are living in the Middle East.
Right.
Or at least exclusively. You wrote it mostly for us here in the States. Why is it important for us to get to know the Muslims in our town?
Well, I mean, partly it's important just because they're people, and if they live in your town, then they're part of your town. I mean, they're part of your city. They're part of the fabric of your everyday life. I mean, more and more people listening to this right now are going to have Muslim coworkers and Muslim neighbors, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually finding now I get an email probably about once a week now from somebody who I don't know who says their son or daughter is dating or is married to a Muslim person.
Yeah.
And they're usually kind of horrified. They're freaked out. They don't know what they should do. And they're asking my opinion. Like I'm Dr. Phil. So all of a sudden, like I'm the
fix it, Carl.
I'm the dating guru for Muslim Christian relations, so, and yeah, that's hard. I mean, that's pretty personal if your kid's dating or, somebody that's married to a Muslim, but just, they're going to be coworkers and neighbors. And so really it's kind of, in one sense, there's part of me that wants to say, let's not treat them any different. They are people like everybody else. I don't even want to be talking about how you should treat your Muslim neighbor. I just will talk about how should you treat your neighbor. And if your neighbor is white, black, brown, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, nothing, secular, atheist, I think we have some fairly clear instructions from Jesus what to do with neighbors. For mostly we love them, and you can't love them if you don't know their names. So step one is get to know. So they're brown skin. The lady wears a headscarf, and the guy has a beard. Do not be afraid. Do not. My guess is they're Pakistani, and they cook the best curry you've ever eaten in your life. And if you're nice to them, they'll invite you for dinner. So yeah. It's a great strategy to get free food. Ask them their names. Ask them where they're from originally. If you say where are you from, they'll probably say Cleveland or wherever America. But where are you from originally? Where's your family from? When did you come over? Tell me about tell me about how it was growing up there. Are you Muslim or Christian? You can ask those. You can ask things that you might. I mean, you won't go to your white neighbor and say, if you're white, and say, "Hey, where are you from originally?" That'd be weird. Or what's your religion? You wouldn't say which. But since they are from someplace different and they do maybe they look Muslim, it's appropriate to say, where are you from originally and are you Muslim? They would want you to ask that. They want to tell you that they're Palestinian. They want to tell you that they're Moroccan. They want to tell you that they're Muslim. They do not want to convert you. They would love to be your friend. They feel totally insecure. Imagine if you're a Muslim living in America. It can't be that much fun, right? So it's our job. We're the host. Let's host them really well. And let's love them well. Let's get to know them. And it's not that difficult.
One of the things that I found interesting that you said in Muslims, Christians, and Jesus was that most Muslims really never read the Quran. It's based a lot more on tradition rather than we kind of apply our rules in Christianity to them. And, we are, especially, I consider myself an evangelical, depending on someone's definition, but I guess I'm trying to say, I believe the Bible is what it says it is and, go to it for many things, but it's not quite the same in the Muslim world for the Quran.
Right. Here's another way to think of that. If you look at all of the Western world, the whole Western world, so that's Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Americas, and you call all that Christian. Call all of that Christian. So America has 300 million plus Christians. Now, we don't think that as evangelicals, but actually, if you poll, and all the polls in America, it depends who you ask, George Barna, Gallup, 80 to 90% still of all Americans call themselves Christian. They're not Buddhist, they're not Hindu, they're not Muslim, they're not Jewish, they're Christians. They're Catholic, they're Protestant, they went to church once.
Yeah.
You went to church at Christmas and Easter ever, then you're a Christian. So in that sense, the quote, I'm putting quotes up here, the quote, Christian world is exactly like the Muslim world. So all of the quote, Christian world of Europe and America, how much do they know the Bible?
Yeah.
So, right? Not very much. I mean, not at all.
Right.
And so the Muslim world is like that. I mean, all the Muslim world, most Muslims just were born that way. And most people who are called Christians in Serbia or Argentina or Spain or Canada, they're Christian by name. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to compare the evangelical Christian world, which values the Bible or reads the Bible maybe every day, to all the Muslim world.
Yeah.
You have to always make sure you're comparing apples to apples. That's what we do also with good and bad. We compare the best of us.
Sure.
Let's say you and I right now, we're the best of us.
Yeah, naturally.
Your listeners, of course.
Yeah.
The best, thoughtful, and we probably are. We're thoughtful evangelical Christians. We're thoughtful. We're trying to be open-minded. We're evangelical in some ways, but like you said, you kind of gave a caveat there. Depends what you mean by that.
Yeah.
So we're really nice, thoughtful, theologically correct evangelicals, and we compare ourselves with Osama bin Laden and ISIS.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's not fair. That's not apples to apples. I mean, those guys are crazy. No Muslim claims them. I don't know any Muslim who claims ISIS right now. I honestly don't know a single Muslim who claims them and says, yep, those are our guys. So we got to make sure we take the bad apples in the Christian world. We take the Crusaders and Spanish Inquisition that killed everybody. We burned at the stake in Salem witch trials, the Ku Klux Klan, who all say they're Christians. Let's compare the KKK, who say they're Christians, with the bad guys in the Muslim world. That's a little bit closer. And let's compare you and I with some of my best friends in the Muslim world who are amazing human beings. And then that's a little bit more fair. Does that make sense? I mean, does that work?
Yeah. You have sat down with what people would call enemies with a capital E. You mentioned your book, Tea with Hezbollah. I'm curious, what drew you to that, to pursue that?
Actually, I mean, some of it was that I enjoy adventure, to be perfectly honest. That's very non-spiritual. There's nothing godly about that. I'm not claiming godliness. I like adventure. I like outdoors adventure. I like to hunt and fish and backpack and extreme sports. And so you translate that into God's kingdom and his world. And what's most adventurous? Well, it's the Middle East. What's most adventurous inside the Middle East? It's the Arab world. What about that? Maybe Lebanon. What about that? It's Hezbollah. What about the Hezbollah? It's the leaders of the Hezbollah. And so there you go. I find myself all of a sudden with the leaders of the Hezbollah. And also it was a realization that Jesus spoke a lot about enemies. He actually spoke a lot about enemies. He says to love them, to bless them, to pray for them. In Luke chapter 6, he says, loan to your enemies without expecting return. A loan with no return is called a gift. Give stuff to your enemies. I mean, it's crazy talk. Nobody would ever think of this except for Jesus. Do not take revenge. Do not repay evil. Good overcome evil with good. Paul says, overcome evil with good. So there's a strategy. Turn the other cheek, walk the extra mile, give the man your coat. He was talking about what to do with your enemies. He was talking about shaming them. It's a shame honor culture. And turning the other cheek, walking the extra mile with a backpack on of your enemy and giving your enemy your coat isn't just being nice. It's not huggy, ooey gooey, let's sing kumbaya stuff. This is in your face. I'm going to shame you because it's a shame honor culture. And you think you got one on me, Mr. Enemy? I'm going to make you so embarrassed. You're going to run away with your tail between your legs. Watch what I'm going to do right now. And that part of the world, taking off your outer garment was like flashing somebody. It was exposing yourself. And the person that sees you is the one who's ashamed.
Right.
Now, frankly, I'd be a little bit embarrassed if I did that as well. So maybe it's embarrassing for the person doing it. But for the person that sees the nakedness, the shame is on them. Slapping the cheek means you have to turn. You have to hit with the other hand. That's a shame on them. Carrying, when the Roman enemy was only allowed to give the slave his backpack for 1 mile. If the slave, in this case, the Jewish listener to Jesus, said, I'll take it an extra mile, the Roman soldier is going to be trying to grab it back. No. You can't do that, or he'll get in trouble. So then you've now controlled the situation. It's a very aggressive it's not passive.
Right.
It's not passivity at all. The cross was not passive. Jesus loved his enemies to death. Literally, he loved them to death. He died. That's not passive. That was the most aggressive, violent act of all time, and Jesus chose to do it. That's conquering your enemies. So I've been captured by this idea that we can outflank, outsmart, outshame, outmanipulate, outshrewd our enemies, and we can win the day by actually doing what Jesus told us to do. And so I want to meet with the Hezbollah and the Hamas and Al-Qaeda and the Bin Laden family and the Muslim Brotherhood, and all these groups that I have met with many times. And I want to encourage them to follow Jesus. If that doesn't work, I'll be happy to shame them into following Jesus. I'll be happy to embarrass them into following. I'll be happy to say things like I've said to the leader of the Hezbollah many times. I've said to him, I think you're too chicken. I think you're too chicken to follow the teaching of Jesus to love your enemies, which is Israel. Because if you were a man, you would love your enemy, Israel, and you would win. You, Mr. Hezbollah leader, you would win. I do this, what I'm doing with you right now that you can't see as you're listening. I'm pointing my finger at Shane.
There's some major finger wagging going on.
There's a finger. I'm wagging my finger in your face, Hezbollah leader guy. If you follow the teaching of Jesus, you would win. And now, whenever I see him, he starts with that. He's like, I know, Carl. I know. I just can't do it. You're right. I am a chicken.
Wow.
I am a chicken.
Wow.
So
that's kingdom stuff.
That's kingdom stuff. That's real stuff. That's what Jesus is talking about here. And I want to be part of that. I don't want to be a part of a kumbaya club. I don't want to sit around a campfire and sing one more verse of Just As I Am. I don't want to sing It Only Takes a Spark. I mean, I don't want to have campfire songs. I mean, I want to be radical. I want to be a soldier that follows this way of Jesus that is so aggressive and so in your face, and it's called love. It's by far the greatest power on earth, and it's untried. We haven't tried that strategy with our actual enemies. But it is a strategy. It's not just a platitude, not just a fun thought. It is a strategy to defeat your enemy and or to get them onto your side. Because if you keep loving your enemy long enough, he'll stop being your enemy. Or he actually might kill you, which is what they did to Jesus. There is also that possibility.
Sure. Can't whitewash it all the time.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so I'm not saying it's not foolproof because life is real, evil exists, and as you're giving them a hug, they might shoot you. So that's possible. But since we haven't tried it very much as Christians, as those who follow the way of Jesus, I think if we did try it, it might work better than what we're doing now, which isn't working very well. Right?
Yeah. I had a friend of mine over at our house a couple of weeks ago who lives in Iraq. And he was saying that, when we do those things like you were talking about earlier, like when we go and meet our Muslim neighbor or make friends with the imam at the mosque down the street, that we really make them safer in Iraq and the Christians who are living in the Middle East by the actions that we take here. That seems very telling.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
I have one listener question here. It's a good one. I'm kind of interested to see what you're going to do with this. This is from Scott, and he said, you recently became more outspoken about your views on Gaza as well as other political issues. I read that you did so because you had come to realize how concerned you were with others liking you and the financial losses that could occur from being more public with those views. How do you find a balance between becoming too overtly political in your public presence, as many of my ultra-conservative Christian friends and families are, and never speaking of political matters at all, thereby allowing the approval of unjust systems by Christian friends and family to go unchallenged?
Wow, that's a simple question.
It's a good one, right?
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah. Scott, I'll be the question asker here from now on, Scott.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's a simple question. I mean, yeah, I would say that my own fears of reprisal from my own community kept me silent on issues regarding Israel, because my kind of support base were missionaries, frankly, in the end. And so we raised support. My support base is conservative, evangelical, probably Republican, probably pro-Israel. And if I offend them, they might stop supporting us. And by the way, I have offended some of them, and they have stopped supporting us. So my fears were actualized in some ways. But as I've grown older and maybe just a little bit wiser, and also I think with age, at some point you start to say, I can't please everybody. I feel comfortable in who I am. I'm not God. I can be wrong. I'm happy to say all the time, and do say as much as I can think of it to say, I could be wrong. I actually feel pretty strongly about this, but I even so could be wrong. And if we're all humble enough to acknowledge that we've felt strongly about all kinds of things throughout our life, and then we realize later we were wrong. So I could be wrong. But I care a little bit less probably now about what people think about my opinion. And I'm always surprised anybody takes me seriously at all. I'm just a guy, Carl. I mean, I think, why are you even listening to me? But I think the political question, I think I've played the same game that lots of us evangelicals have played, which is it's a funny mix of we want to be involved in politics and have influence in politics, but we'll say, but Jesus wasn't political. Yeah. Jesus was spiritual. Jesus wants your heart. Well, Jesus was extremely political. I think everything that Jesus said at the time would have been heard through a political lens. Why do you think Herod killed all the baby boys that were 2 years old? Because he had heard there was a new king in town and had been born. He knew that because these 3 very rich kings came from the east to visit him, and so Jesus had to flee to Egypt to escape being killed when he was a little baby boy. And so Jesus' message of this new kingdom, claiming himself to be the king of this new kingdom, was always a political message. Their disciples, now they kept confusing the politics up until the very end. Can you imagine the last thing the disciples said to Jesus before Jesus ascended in Acts chapter 1? The disciples looked up as he's going up. I'm sure Jesus is like clutching his head thinking, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. But they said, so Jesus, is now the time that you'll restore the kingdom of Israel to us? And he doesn't even answer. He just, he goes on up, So he had just finished saying, you'll be my witnesses everywhere. But They got the message confused again. They still thought it was about a political kingdom on earth. So I think there is no difference between politics and my spiritual life of following Jesus as my Messiah, my King, my Lord, my Savior, my friend. Politics is just the working out of real life on earth these days that always has a spiritual component to it. It's not necessarily a spiritual undertaking, but there's something spiritual about it as well. And the politics of Israel and Palestine are some of the most intense because it does mix religion with land, with oil, with terrorism, with the Jewish people, God's chosen or not, and all that. So it's this. So I've just decided just this year. Well, I mean, specifically since the Gaza-Israel war started, back in July, I think I'm not going to be silent about that. And I don't want to make it just a political issue, but I want to poke at people's theology of the land. You can still be pro-Israel politically if you want to be. If you think Israel is a political light as a democracy to surrounding neighbors, fine, fair enough. I actually think that's also not true. But if you think that, fair enough. But just don't tell me that God gave them that land. Don't tell me that. That's actually not true. That's not true. He did give the children of Israel, the Israelites, that land in the Old Testament. Jesus came and fulfilled all those promises. The promise of land was fulfilled in Christ. It's not replacement theology. The church did not replace Israel. It's fulfillment theology. Jesus fulfilled that. He's the Lamb. He is everything. He's the Alpha and Omega. He's the capstone. He's the finisher of our faith. He's everything. I mean, he says that again and again and again. So I do feel like it's okay to talk politics in the church. It's okay to talk about, can you be pro-justice? Can you be pro-racial reconciliation? Can you be pro-immigration? You're okay with immigrants coming into our country? And I mean, can you be that and not be labeled liberal? I mean, I believe all those things, but I still think abortion's a horrible idea. I'm generally against war, so that makes me liberal, but I'm against abortion, that makes me conservative. I believe the whole Bible is God's word, that makes me conservative. But, so back and forth, like we started out. We're in trouble with everybody.
Sure.
I want to think. Let's think clearly. Think clearly about these things, about how God sees them, and go from there.
It seems like kind of what you're saying is that when we follow Jesus into his politics, that never really aligns you with Republicans or Democrats or these systems that we've come up with.
That's right. Exactly. It's God's kingdom is bigger than all that, and America and Israel and everybody else fits under God's kingdom. We're not on top of it. We're not equal with it. We are submissive to that. And so all of our American agendas, our American ideals and hopes and dreams as a nation, that's one thing. But there's a bigger thing called God's hopes and dreams for us as a nation, as a people, and as individuals. And, what is that? That's what we're seeking first, is God's kingdom. And it's sometimes easy to forget that or mix it up with some other kingdom. And I think that's always dangerous to do. It's obviously dangerous. And you see it being played out in the most extreme ways with what's happening in ISIS right now. They've also mixed their version of God's kingdom with a political caliphate. And see how dangerous that is. And when Christendom has done that in the past, in centuries past, it's been equally as dangerous. Christians, in the name of Christianity, have killed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands, probably millions of people in the name of Christendom. So we should know better than that. And I think we generally do know better than that. So we don't do that. We have another way. We have a way of the cross, the way of submission, the way of surrender to Jesus that brings freedom. That surrender brings total freedom. It's beautiful.
Just today, I'm seeing posts on my Facebook wall of clips of Fox News interviewing, and I don't know the guy's name, but the Duck Dynasty guy.
Yeah, Phil Robertson, probably.
About the older guy, about what's going on in the Middle East, about ISIS, which, that's who I go to for my political opinions. Right. But anyways, he said we should convert them or kill them, which is exactly what the Crusades were about. So some of us have learned something since then, but some of us not so much. Some of us would love to repeat history if we could.
He really said that. Convert them or kill them.
I saw somebody had quoted it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So It's kind of a sad state of affairs in some corners of the blogosphere and TV network.
Yeah, sad.
Carl, I've had such a good time talking with you. I'm going to have links on the show notes to your website and to some of your books. And so for listeners, please go check it out. Carl has some great blog posts and elaborated much more on some of the things that we talked about today, more than we can fit into a podcast. So go check that out. Carl, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. Let's do it again.
Sounds good. Some of you may have noticed that I didn't publish a podcast last week. There was no Seminary Dropout. That's mostly because I had kind of a crazy week. I was stacked full of interviews for Seminary Dropout, so much so that I didn't have time to actually make that week's show. I'm trying not to ever do that again, but you just never know. I also had some other pre-planned things. Some things came up. On Thursday, I had bought tickets several weeks back for a Brady Tube show. Some of you might remember Brady from episode 32 of Seminary Dropout. If you didn't listen to that one, you should definitely check it out. Brady is on tour right now, and I got to see him and say hi and hang out with them, and he's just as amazing in person as he was on the podcast. So go check that out. That's where I was Thursday night. And then starting Friday morning, I went to this ragamuffin retreat that you may have heard me talk about. I interviewed David Schultz in episode 43 about his making of the movie Ragamuffin, which was the Rich Mullins biopic. And then he and then some of the people that make the movie did these Ragamuffin retreats, just 3 of them across the country. And I got to go, and that's where I was this weekend. So I left Friday morning and came back Sunday. Thursday morning, I was trying to get some work done before the retreat, before I went to the Brady Tube show with Kate. And I opened my laptop and I see on Facebook that one of the presenters, her name is Kathy Sprinkle, one of the presenters at the retreat for the weekend had a medical emergency. So, say a little prayer for her, was, kind of concerned. And it turns out that she is okay. She got taken care of, but she couldn't make it to the retreat. So after I see that on Facebook, a little while after that, I get a call on my phone from David Schultz, the director of Ragamuffin, who's putting on the retreat that's coming. And so said, "Hey, David, what's up, man? How's it going?" He said, "Hey, I don't know if you saw, but Kathy had a medical emergency, is not going to be able to be there. Man, I'm just wondering if you would want to do the session this weekend." So I had a great time at the retreat and led a session on prayer. And I think it went well. I enjoyed it very, very much. And I really, really enjoyed meeting all the people there. It's a small group, about 40. And so all of you, if you're listening, I had such a great time getting to know you. There were people from all over the country there, and we just had a really good time out in the middle of nowhere in an encampment, spending time with Jesus and with each other in prayer and listening to some great teachings. Dave Mullins, who was Rich Mullins' brother, led most of the sessions, and just an extremely genuine guy and really a wonderful teacher as well and pastor. So had a fun weekend there. And if you haven't seen the Ragamuffin movie, you should definitely do it. And David just announced he's actually in the script writing process for a script for a movie on Brennan Manning. And I'm pretty excited about that. Huge Brennan Manning fan. Ragamuffin Gospel meant a whole lot to me. And if you haven't read that book, you should definitely check it out. So all that to say, that's a little bit about what's going on with me and why there was no seminary dropout last week. So I've got plenty of interviews in the can ready to go. It's just a matter of editing them, producing them, putting all that music in, and that kind of stuff. Today, as I'm recording this, it is 11/11. It is the date that most resembles corduroy. So I hope you wore corduroy today, people. It's a civic duty. What else is going on? Doritos has announced that or maybe Mountain Dew announced it. I guess PepsiCo announced it. That there is such thing as Dorito flavored Mountain Dew. That's pretty gross. Okay, humanity, I think it's time you went in your room and thought about your choices for a while. Well, I think that's it. There are no iTunes new reviews or ratings for me to thank, so please make sure you go do that. If you've been listening or if it's your first time to listen to this episode, please go give a rating and review. Even if you don't like it, that's fine. Go to iTunes. Tell me about it. iTunes, look up Seminary Dropout, leave that rating and review, and make sure you're subscribed as well. Remember, all past episodes of Seminary Dropout are for free and online at ShaneBlackshear.com or wherever podcasts are available. All right, that's it. I'll see you next week. Remember, the music you're listening to is by D.L. Rossi. Love you. See you next time.